Is the word lie a good word to use? Now, you might say, well, don't we want to winnow people, the good from the bad, so to speak, on a continuum, or the useful to us from the not so useful? A Christian scripture might say, so-and-so are evil and so-and-so are good, even. How are we to discern truth from non-truth, in fact? And what about the term in a courtroom where we're urged very strongly to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Also, there are lies, and then there are tacit lies, so to speak, wherein lies of omission, you might call it. But what is a lie? And what is deception then? Why, in fact, does Evie Pamperis, who was once a Secret Service agent, why does she mention, amongst other places in her book Bulletproof, that in general it's good not to use the word lie? In fact, she strongly urges us to watch our words very carefully and to use, say, the word lie only for special, powerful effect at times, not as a general rule. For in fact, if you were to watch political programming on a television, you might see both sides accusing each other vehemently of lying. What is it then that strikes our ire if we're accused of lying, such that we're urged strongly by some not to even use the word in general, but to substitute, such as Evie Pamperis again, urging the substitute word of untruth, say. Consider, too, Dr. Anne Schaaf, who passed away a few years ago, wrote a book entitled When Society Becomes an Addict. And she stated therein that one of her biggest problems growing in life was an incapacity in young years to spot lies. And there's also a book I have been pondering through entitled Lies, Lies, Lies. I stick the word comma in for effect, by a Dr. Ford, M.D. Why then are we urged to spot lies and yet not use the word lie? And if we're not going to use the word lie, then what word will we use that has a strong enough connotation that it's something to be of some concern about, to place some emphasis upon? To simply say something is an untruth doesn't seem to have the wallop power behind it. Well, looking online, I've seen through the years that mankind is not the only creature, so to speak, that has deceptive tendencies, that this can happen all through nature. Thus, the moths that mimic a tree bark to blend in, being somewhat deceptive to creatures that might otherwise want to gobble it up all the more quickly. You can call it also a chameleon effect. In fact, I just received a book in the mail the other day from someone I once met entitled Chameleon Christianity. Blending in, so to speak, I suppose, to fit the circumstances. There's even a book by Fletcher, Situation Ethics, talking about love from a certain perspective here. Almost like, again, a chameleon perspective. And finally, there's been talk online or in journals, etc., in general, of how even viruses can mimic a certain way of being to invade. And I love the example, too, of the Venus flytrap plant, one of which I owned as a child to my delight. A plant that can gobble up flies. It has an open mouth, so to speak. And when a fly strikes a certain trigger point inside, bam, the fly is captured by the plant suddenly snapping its jaws shut. You might say then, the plant lies or deceives. Viruses also. Moths, chameleons, and so on. But what's the big deal then as a human being in saying someone else lies or is a liar? Beyond the impact of contempt, say, or bitterness or anger attached to this, which is not a comfortable thing to deal with from someone else. What gets our ire? What gets our goat about even considering ourselves to lie, or hearing it put upon us as a phrase from someone else? Well, it strikes me that it has a lot to do with our wanting to believe that we do the best we can given what we are handed. You might say we want to understand ourselves, how we walk in our own shoes, and the same for others. And others want us to understand them same. And hence, including the use of deceptions. But are we to be then morally culpable and in some circles contemptible for having chosen a lie, a deception, versus it's simply happening not by choice but simply a string of events, a chain of events? For do you think a virus actually decides to be deceptive? Does a moth decide to be deceptive? And does a Venus flytrap plant actually decide by choice to deceive flies? Or is it thus only a chain of events that somehow evolved and it's called a matter of deception? So on a human level, maybe to use the word lie and to connote or imply that someone chose it, when in fact, arguably, in some philosophical circles or mindsets, it's simply a chain of events like the Venus flytrap deceptive act, shall we say, act. Well then, maybe we humans don't like to be blamed for something not in our control. Some saying nothing is in our control, including deception. So the upshot, I think, is this. Maybe the term lie, or even deceiving, is a lie in itself, a partial lie. It conveys both a truth and an untruth, if you will, a truth and a deception of the sort that claims we chose to be of a nature or entity that someone else will often misconceive or fall for, so to speak. For finally, what about quicksand? You wouldn't step into quicksand if it were apparent from the start that there's a patch of quicksand out there. We only step into quicksand because it isn't apparent. You might say thus quicksand is deceptive or lying, but is this apparent deception by choice? Or is it simply, once again, just the way it has come to be, or you might say evolved? So, if we were to get our ire up, our dander up, our anger going about quicksand being what it is, and cursing quicksand for having deceived us, lied to us, wouldn't that be a curious thing? On a human level, then, isn't this perhaps arguably the same thing? If we're to say someone is deceptive and blame them and curse them and be angry at them, as if their deceptive manner or how we interpret them and sends us off course all too often was by choice, is the very use of that word then that connotes this supposed choice a deception in and of itself. Thus, on talk show hosts, for instance, if someone is accusing someone else of lying, is the very use of the word lie a partial truth and partial mistruth? In other words, is it a lie to use the word lie? Because to use the word lie implies you're commenting upon someone else having a deceptive manner or aspect as to how we interpret them that was supposedly by choice. For if a lie were not by choice, would it even be an issue in a courtroom? Or would it simply be something we penalize because we wish to see it evolve into happening much less? Some thoughts here to consider, I think. For else, why would someone urge us, like Evie pamper us, to generally not use the word lie? Why is it so hated to be heard that we have lied? Unless, once again, the word lie is a partial lie. For built into it is, yes, the statement that something can send us off course because it is not what it is basically, quote, labeled on the surface or apparent at first glance to be, like quicksand, or a mirage, shall we say, on the sunset caused by heat waves, distorting the atmosphere that we look through. Yet to say this was all choice as to how we went off course, I think is both a truth and a mistruth. So the ironic thing, perhaps a lie, to use the word lie is a lie, partly, and thus better to use other words, like inaccuracy, or as I would coin in my own view or terminology, a massive inaccuracy. Or you might call it a mirage, something that appears on the surface to be one thing, and all of us busy beavers these days, in urban areas especially, having little time and little calmness to observe beyond the surface. For if we look deeper, we would see all is not what it appears at first glance or casual inspection. And right there, that being one of the big problems in misperceiving and then claiming something was a lie or deception. If we were to look more closely, we would not have gone off track so quickly, and thus not claim we had been deceived. Thoughts here?